the next big power will be an AI strong player. There'll be a strong player in AI. And I agree with him. If we understand the true use case of AI, which is a tool that helps you augment your work, helps you do better at your work, it will help countries make better decisions on healthcare, on education, on national security issues, etc., etc. In fact, a study was released last week by some economists that was saying that AI could build the next middle class. And the argument they were making was the current state of AI, which if you think of it in terms of its evolution as a technology, is still in its very early days. If we use the car as an example, we're still in 1920s equivalent of a car, so we have a long way to go. But what the current AI tools enable us to do today is that the bottom productive people in an organization are moved up considerably, right? What that means is that they are more productive. Who it doesn't help is the top and most productive players or most productive employees in an institution, because they've understood that they need to go deeper than what the AI gives them. What are the big risks we have currently? So bias and discrimination, it makes decisions based on race or gender because of the data that it has been fed. Another big issue is job displacement and economic impact. It is true, AI makes a lot of roles irrelevant and redundant. So what does a regulator need to start thinking about, and how do you start thinking about this? Security and privacy concerns. Yesterday, I listened to a podcast in preparation of this where they took the voice of one of our leading politicians, somebody like Barack Obama, and made a whole speech, in his voice, yet it isn't him. And when the founder was asked, are you not scared by this? He said, he obviously downplayed it, and he said that our AI tool has a specific signature so that if we decode whatever the data that's coming out, it will let us know that this is an AI voice. But when I was listening to that, I was thinking to myself, but does the listener who doesn't know this type of signature exists know that it isn't Barack Obama speaking? So a real security and privacy issue there. Lack of transparency and explainability. I'm sure you've heard me speak before, and if you haven't, there's a story I like to tell about how, and Tala says this publicly now, how one of the most predictive insights about the ability to repay of a customer is how they save the names in their smartphone. So my name is Kevin Mutiso, and if I save my name as capital K EVIN, capital MUTISO, I'm more likely to repay the loan than somebody who saves my name as small k EVIN, small m MUTISO, right? So the question you're going to ask me is why or how? And it's very difficult to explain that. So explainability is a real problem when it comes to AI. And so as the regulators are thinking about this, they need to also just put that in mind. And then, of course, there are the ethical implications. Are you comfortable with an AI tool making a decision on your credit future? Let's even move it to security. Are you comfortable with an AI tool shooting a gun at a fellow human being during war? Right? So there's also that sort of deep thinking that needs to happen around how do we regulate AI. Sorry guys, my tool is not working. But the purpose of the current regulatory framework under which ambit I sit in is financial services. So we are already using AI. A lot of the big banks are using AI for fraud detection. I don't think this is news to anyone. Digital lenders have been using AI for credit scoring and risk assessment for a long time. I've just given you a very clear example of that. Customer service and personalization, the startup that I am involved in, we use WhatsApp bots for communicating with our customers, and even selling certain products and testing out that functionality. Investment and trading, there are certain algos, trading companies that exist that are beating humans. I've just forgotten the name before I got on stage, but there's one in particular that was founded in 2009 that has been doing 50% year-on-year returns on the New York Stock Exchange. So they're trading algorithms, trading AI solutions that are already beating the human being. And then, of course, risk management and compliance. So the question here is, which regulator is thinking deeply about this, which is sort of the message I want to put out across. The one regulator that I'm seeing doing quite a bit of work is the Singaporean Monetary Authority of Singapore, and I'll talk about what they're doing. And then the other country that should be doing something is Kenya. We should be thinking about this specifically because we are pioneers in many areas without even realizing it, right? And so we should start asking ourselves those tough questions that need to be answered, and then take that sort of first step to being the leader in AI regulation. And if you remember my first slide, whichever country rules AI, owns AI, rules the world. And so that's also the framing as a country and as a regulator we should be thinking about. So the big term in regulation today around AI is responsible AI, right? And there are several questions that need to be asked when asking these, what do we mean by responsible AI? And so I'll give you the story of what Singapore has done as an example of, I wouldn't want to say best case scenario because it's still so early, but the best case scenario today, right? So the Monetary Authority of Singapore first sort of created a department within the regulatory framework and had somebody who had experience in AI governance to come and lead that consortium. They then invited several actors, including banks, industry associations, fintechs, of course AI specialists and others, to sit in a room and agree on what they called the principles of responsible AI. So the Singaporeans created their own principles according to them, right? And then created a toolkit. Now, one of the key insights that the regulator, and I'm part of a world, what they call a working group around responsible AI, where the Monetary Authority of Singapore regulator spoke. And he said one of the key insights they've gained during this process is that fairness is a difficult principle to execute or to enforce, because there's a real direct correlation with fairness and return on capital. And so there's a tension between what we want as, in their definition, a just society or just regulatory framework, and the capitalists and the bankers and the entrepreneurs and the businesses in the room then highlight the problem that creates when trying to optimize for revenue. And so one of the key challenges they faced was trying to figure out that balance. They had several principles, but I wanted to just highlight that specific one on fairness. Once they came up with the principles, they came up with an evaluation methodology. This methodology is basically, you take your platform, you run it through this methodology, and if it comes out with ticks or X, you sort of have now a question that then will be placed by the regulator to ask you, the business, how are you solving for this, right? I thought that was very innovative, because that means that there's a conversation that has been had, there's a mutual understanding, and therefore there's a base case scenario as to what the business can and cannot do. The consortium is known as the Veritas Consortium. You can Google them. They've put out a lot of public data. The regulator was the sponsor of the conversations. And so, in Kenya, we have the famous Naivasha or Mombasa retreats, They sponsored those. It wasn't the private sector sponsoring them. And they had design thinking workshops and various other workshops just to come up with those principles and those and the toolkit. And I'll put the toolkit link there for anyone who would like to sort of play around with it. If there's any regulator in the room, the MAS has said publicly that they'll be open to work with other regulators who are also struggling to figure out this question. And my time is up, so thank you very much. I hope that was useful. Asante sana.